Hey everyone, and welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be creating a simple interaction tutorial. So as you can see in this image here, the player character, you, will be walking around. You'll interact, you just walk up to an object, and when you get within a certain distance, something will happen. So to start off, we'll jump into Unreal Engine. So we want to choose the third person template, blueprint, and we do not need any starter content. So I will just call this interaction tutorial. Now, the first thing we need to do is create an input action for our interaction. So to do that, I'm using Control and Space to bring up the content browser. Alternatively, you can also just dock it in your layout here, but I do not like that. So we'll go to third person and then input, and we want to create a new action here. So we go to input, input action, and I'll call this IA_interaction. And you don't actually have to put any code into this. It is just kind of a container. And then we go back here into IMC default. And then in the mapping tab here, we'll just add a new mapping, IA interaction. And this is where you will set what key the interaction occurs with. So you can make it F or E, whatever you want. You can even make it a mouse click. So I'll go to keyboard and I'll just make it my F key. Now we're going to do some setup for this system. So first of all, we need a blueprint to actually interact with. So I'm going to create a new folder, _core, and I'm doing the underscore so it appears at the very start. And then in here, I'll make a new folder called code, and I'll just make a blueprint class of type actor. And we'll call this BP_cube. Now, in this BP cube, we need to do a couple things. Currently it is empty. I will add a static mesh component, and I will make that a cube. Then we will add a box collision. And you'll notice it's quite small, so we just have to size it up a bit. I'll go with 100, 100, 100. We want it nice and big so the player can walk up to it. Okay, now that we have the BP cube set up, we can just leave it like this. I'll just rename this actually to box collision, so it's a bit more noticeable. Save that. We now have to create an interface. So I'm going to go to blueprint interface, and we'll call this BPI_player interaction. And this will essentially be used to tell whatever object you're overlapping with that it is an actual player interacting, or overlapping, I should say, with the collision box. So we'll first of all open this up, and we will also go over to content, third person, blueprints, and open up our BP third person character. So we want to go to class settings, and we want to add the interface we just created. So I'll just type in BPI, player interaction. Then we compile, and that is done for now. Now we are going to set up the interface for the player interaction. So essentially, we are going to create a new function for every object the player could interact with in your world. So we'll start off with a new function, and we'll just call it player overlap cube ? And we'll add two inputs. First, it'll be a boolean. We'll go player overlapping, if I can spell, overlapping cube. And then the second input is actually going to be an object reference to the blueprint that we created earlier, which is bpcube. And you will see why this is important later. Essentially, we need to be able to access the functions that we're going to store in bpcube in other blueprints, such as the player character. And we'll just call this cube. And we also want to mark it call in editor to true. And that's it for the player interaction interface setup. So just compile and save that. Okay, now we actually want to go back into the cube and set a few things up. First off, we'll get this collision, and we'll want to create two events, begin overlap and end overlap. On begin overlap, we want to check if the other actor, in this case the player, if they implement a interface, and we will choose the player interaction interface that we added at the start. And then if that is true, so we'll get a branch node and set this as the condition. If that's true, we will call player overlap cube, and we'll set this value to true. This is just a Boolean value that we're setting to true right now. And then we also have to hook up the other actor into the target. And we're going to copy paste this down here. Except this time, when the player ends overlap, we are going to set this to false. So just connect those up. And to help illustrate what this is actually doing, we can add a print string. So say player has interacted or has overlapped with cube. Then we'll copy and paste the same thing down here. Player has left cube. Ignore the typos. And then in our third person map here, we will go into here and drag the cube. You can see the collision box. See, player has overlapped, player has left. Overlapped, left. And that's all that code is doing. It's just setting a Boolean value that we can use further on for triggering certain code. Now we're actually going to add a function in here for when the player interacts. So to do that, I will just go here, add a new function, and I'll call this destroy cube. And here we will just go destroy actor. And that's all we have to do. So now that we have that, we are now going to create a widget. So when you are in range to interact with the cube, it will say press F or E, whatever key you have, to interact with the cube. Okay, so we're back in the content browser, and you can go here, user interface, widget blueprint. You use this class here. I'm going to call this widget blueprint underscore, let's say, cube interaction. It's going to be quite simple. We're just going to add a canvas panel and a simple text in here. Now I'm going to anchor it like this, and I'm just going to move it down here. So I'll just increase the size of this a little bit. And we'll just say press F to interact with cube. And that's all you need for this widget. Now we're going to jump into the BP third person character and actually set up this interaction properly. So first of all, we want to type event, and let's just find it, event cube, event player overlap cube. So you'll see a few things here. First of all, there is this variable here, the Boolean, player overlapping cube, which I've misspelt terribly. And if you remember, we set that up here. When the player overlaps, that is true. And and we're using that as a condition here. So first of all, I'm going to get a branch node and plug this in as a condition here. If that is true, then we want to create a widget, and I'll get class cube interaction. And then I will add to viewport. And then if that is false, I will go remove from, I'll go remove from parent. So essentially what this is doing, I guess I'll show you actually. So this is essentially just, this is constantly being turned on and off whenever the player walks in range of the box. And then we're using that as a condition here. Just have to plug that in, compile and save. See, press F to interact with cube, walk out and it goes away. So currently there is no actual code attached to that F key. Let's do that now. So now we're actually going to add the code so when you interact with the cube, that function fires off. However, first I forgot to do something earlier in the video. We're going to jump back into the BP cube here, and we have to get a reference to self. And we plug that into both of these. Otherwise, it's not going to know what cube you're talking about. So BP cube, since we created that as an object reference, it has to get a reference to that here. So in third person character, we have this code here. We will now get event IA underscore interaction. Now we want to get here a branch node, and the condition will be player overlapping cube. And to access the function we created earlier to destroy the cube, we drag off the cube here, and we'll just type destroy cube. If that is true, destroy cube. And just, yep, that's actually fine. See, now the cube is destroyed. And that's pretty much it. Walk up to it. Player has overlapped. I want to destroy it. Now, you can do a lot of things with this code. You can pretty much apply it to anything. Say you had a function stored somewhere in the player character, you could call that function. If you had a different function in the cube, for example, you make a function that changes the color of the static mesh, you can call that. It's a pretty simple setup, and you can apply it to pretty much anything. If you've got any questions, just comment below, but I hope this video was helpful.